Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for Pastor Roach. Let's pray.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pleasure to be with you. I know we have a lot of important things to discuss today, and so we're going to just start with prayer. Would you please bow your heads with me? God of power, might, wisdom, and justice, through you authority is rightly administered, laws are enacted, judgment is decreed. The prayer is that you would assist with your spirit of counsel and fortitude the Township supervisors and other governmental leaders of North Franklin Township this afternoon. And they always seek the ways of righteousness, justice, and mercy. Grant that they may be enabled by your powerful protection to lead our township with honesty and integrity. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Pastor Roach.
If I could have everybody's attention 1 minute, if you could stay standing for 1 minute. I just want to recognize we lost a beloved member of the community last Friday in Evelyn Mall, who did many township cleanups, litter pickups, beautification, flower planting, and wonderful lady. And we lost her at the age of 68 by brain aneurysm last Friday. So I would ask for a moment of silence for her. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we begin, I just want to make mention that if you have questions or you want response, please come to the podium, state your name and address.
I got two.
So we all can hear and go from there. We have the mic so everyone can hear. Okay, here.
Okay, we're going to open the record for a hearing on the zoning ordinance amendments that the Township Supervisors, Planning Commission, solicitor, and consultant have been working on for the past few years. This hearing was scheduled for today at 3:45. Anytime a township amends its zoning ordinance or zoning map, its actions are governed by Section 609 of the Municipalities Planning Code. That addresses how zoning changes are to be effected. In this case, after the present draft of the zoning ordinance with amendments was prepared, it was submitted to the Planning Commission for the Township on multiple occasions for review and comment, and to the Washington County Planning Commission for review and comment as required by Section 609 of the MPC. This is now the final stage of considering the zoning amendments. This hearing was advertised on July 31 and August 7 in the legal section of the Observer Reporter, which is the required public notice that needs to be given. Just want to take a couple minutes to explain the process. We have engaged in a joint zoning effort and joint comprehensive plan with 3 neighboring townships / municipalities, that being Canton Township, Hopewell Township, and West Middletown Borough. The DCNR, the DCED, the state agencies encourage joint cooperation among townships and authorities, and they look favorably when regions react that way. Regional police, regional zoning. And in this case, the 4 townships were the recipients of a significant grant that helped to fund most, if not all, of the zoning amendment efforts that were undertaken by the neighboring municipalities. The joint group of townships retained environmental planning and design, and the principal from environmental planning that kind of guided this effort was Carolyn Yeagle, who's here tonight to talk about the changes that were made. I know from firsthand experience this has been a couple years in the making. Multiple meetings have occurred, and the main areas, and Carolyn and Attorney Crooney will cover these areas. The main area that they concentrated on for purposes of the North Franklin Township zoning ordinance dealt with the airport and updating the FAA regulations as they are reflected in our township ordinance, dealing with overlays to the airport district, overlays to the commercial district, absorbing the oil and gas ordinance that this township worked on a few years ago into our code of ordinances, dealing with the issue of commercial vehicles in residential neighborhoods, and also identifying shared uses between the municipalities. And Carolyn can speak to, one of the benefits of a joint zoning effort is the sharing of uses, and we'll elaborate more on this. The draft of the ordinance has been available for inspection at the township building and website, and any additions to that zoning ordinance will be once again made available. No action will be taken by the board this evening. The earliest any action will be taken on adopting the zoning amendments would be at the September legislative meeting of the board. For purposes of this record, I'm going to identify Hearing Exhibit A as the advertising notices, Hearing Exhibit B, a complete draft of the zoning ordinance with amendments, as well as the zoning map showing the overlay districts, and a short form glossary of terms and identifying the zoning districts and the different sections of the zoning ordinance. Exhibit C would be the recommendations from the Washington County Planning Commission. Exhibit D would be the recommendations from the Township Planning Commission. Exhibit E will be the proposed revision to Article 2, Section 202, and Article 11, Section 1107 of the zoning ordinance that deals with off-duty personal use, parking and loading of commercial vehicles in residential neighborhoods. And the oil and gas ordinance, which has previously been adopted, has always been available. Procedurally, we're just going to be moving that into its section of the zoning ordinance and codified accordingly. So with that, I also want to announce we have a court stenographer here. We're going to proceed with Carolyn giving an overview of the process, Attorney Crooney discussing certain items. They will then be subject to any questions the supervisors may have of our professionals, and then we'll open it up for public comment. I would ask that you come forward, you state your name and your address within the township, and you'll be sworn in by the stenographer, and all of this is going to be transcribed. Okay? With that, I'm going to ask that you swear Carolyn in, please.
Raise your right hand, please. Solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yes. Can I have the spelling of your last name?
Y-A-G-L-E.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? I see on the table.
Turn the button.
Well, I don't think that's going. Yeah, hit the button.
Now?
Here,
All right. Thank you. My name is Carolyn Yeagle. I work with environmental planning and design. I am both a certified planner and a registered landscape architect in terms of my professional certifications. As part of the multi-municipal planning that has been happening over the past number of years, here within this area, we've been working with you all, as well as Canton, Hopewell, and West Middletown Borough. Last week, I had the opportunity to be part of the public hearing process in Hopewell and West Middletown. They together are actually having a joint ordinance between the two of them. And so a few moments ago there was reference to actually the sharing of uses, and that is applicable to you all. You are not proposing to share your ordinance, your document, your ordinance with the other municipalities. You, as part of this effort, are sharing your table of uses. And what that means is something very important and permitted by the municipality's planning code, by the Commonwealth, because you all, as a municipality, participated in the joint comprehensive plan effort. That participation enabled you to pursue this type of effort with the joint zoning sharing of uses. So by doing the one, you're now able to do another. If the municipality does not participate in a joint comprehensive planning effort, they do not have the opportunity to do the sharing of uses or the sharing of ordinances as you all are having pursued. So I think it's very important to identify that you all are actually taking great responsibility and forwarding that in the fact that you are thinking about what things within your ordinance are currently provided for, and in some cases what are not provided for. What the sharing of uses means is that if there is not a land use that's called out in your zoning ordinance, that someone in one of the other someone can go to one of the other 3 municipalities and have the opportunity to pursue that kind of land use. What it equates to from a legal side and any other aspects that you need to fill in here, Mr. Crooney or Mr. Sweat, is that you would, in adopting this sharing of uses, you will not have an ordinance that's exclusionary to any land use. So that is a significant benefit for anyone, for any municipality participating in a joint, I'll speak up, in a joint planning or ordinance effort. So that's sort of the baseline of what is happening here and the baseline of why that is most significant. No worries.
There you go.
Okay, so from a perspective of content, what we have identified within North Franklin Township's effort is that you do provide for a wide range of uses today. In the cases of something like some of these common or current types of land use pursuits, such as a medical marijuana dispensary or medical marijuana grower processor facility, if it has to do with agricultural things that in some areas that you have here, you actually are having other types of uses that will expand the possibilities of someone being able to do that in the region if they're not specifically able to do that here, of great value. The second thing that is introduced in this ordinance is actually, and as it relates to a master planning effort within the commercial districts. That is something in combination with the subdivision and land development ordinance that you all will have the opportunity, an applicant could have the opportunity in one of the commercial districts to look at redevelopment and infill in sort of advantageous way. Meaning, a lot of what your commercial areas are zoned actually have development today. There is very little vacant land. The master planning process that is introduced in this ordinance will enable someone to be able to go through a master plan process and then that review process through the Planning Commission and the board. And what that is encouraging is actually in terms of redevelopment of some of the properties. When it's time in certain areas for that to occur, a property owner can take advantage of that kind of process. And so from really the ability for the township, as well as any landowner, applicant, developer, to be able to work towards the common goal of having quality redevelopment in the future. So that is something where a lot of ordinances address what is the development of something, but from a perspective of thinking about in the decades ahead, what does it mean for redevelopment within your municipality and using that master planning process for that. So that I think is important.
And something that the Planning Commission, as we went through various versions of this with the Planning Commission at their meetings, trying to really hone in on what were the possibilities, and this content is based on their recommendation. The other aspect that was highlighted a moment ago was actually in regard to the airport overlay. There are some federal regulations that, of course, are pertaining to you all. We have made updates to those comments that will, if there are any, can be incorporated into the ordinance as well based on that update. And then lastly, we have taken things from a use standpoint. If there was a use that otherwise needed to be defined or honed based on what was in the municipality's planning code, those kinds of updates that periodically happen, we've addressed those. From a perspective of, so that is new content or revision to content, amendment to content. Something from just a formatting perspective that is included within the document is actually the incorporation of what you all had passed in the past, meaning PASSED in the PAST, as it related to oil and gas. We have not made any revision to that content in terms of things that would be incorporated into this ordinance. Things that you all had updated in the past are now put together in the same document, so that we're not looking at separate ordinances. So I think those, from the perspective of what's been included in the document, and again, the emphasis that you are sharing uses, which is a benefit to all of the municipalities. And just as I mentioned, some of the examples here, we have also identified in the hearing last week in Hopewell and West Middletown, for example, they are now able to take advantage of some of the industrial types of uses that are called out, say, in your ordinance or in Canton's ordinance. So they are also having that benefit. I do need to restate something and correct that. There was one revision in terms of some agricultural land that was in the eastern portion of the township. That map change was something that the Planning Commission looked at and has been included in the public review draft. I just did need to restate that. So from a perspective of what we have addressed, I am not able to speak individually on the commercial vehicle component that was referenced, as I believe that will be addressed at a later point today. So if there are any questions, I can answer them, or if a matter of testimony you want people to be able to give comment, then I can step aside.
Carol, just a couple questions. On the concept of shared uses,
Yes.
what can you give an example of some of the uses that we're borrowing from other townships in order to not be exclusionary and have a valid ordinance?
Yes. I'll give one example as sort of in the context of some of the group residential type facilities where other municipalities are hosting that. I did give the example of the medical marijuana dispensary and grower processor. That's in the Hopewell ordinance. As well as then I think sort of the full gamut of industrial types of pursuits, both the heavy industrial and the light industrial, where Canton has